Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 23, the Brahman's Wives Blessed. Text number 15 onwards. So yesterday we discussed about Krishna, Balram and the cowherd boys. They were in the forest with the cows, herding their cows, and then it was very hot. And Krishna, Balram sat under a tree. They asked the cowherd boys' friends to go and ask for food from the Brahmins who were doing yajna. So the Brahmins did not give them any food. Now Krishna Balram sent them to the wives of the Brahman, and they said, these wives are real devotees. They will definitely give you some food. So let's see. Gatvat patani shalayam trishtva sina svalankrita natvad bij satir gopaha prashrita idam abruvan. The cowherd boys then went to the house where the Brahman's wives were staying. There the boys saw those chaste ladies sitting nicely decorated with fine ornaments. Bowing down to the Brahman ladies, the boys addressed them all in all humility. Namo vo vipra patnibhyo nibodhat vachansinaha ito avidure charata krishne nehishite vayam nehishita vayam. The cowherd boys said, obeisances unto you, wives of the learned Brahmins. Kindly hear our words. We have been sent here by Lord Krishna, who is passing by, not far from here. Gashcharyan sa gopala saramo duramagata babhukshi tasya tasyannam sanugasya pradiyatam. He has come a long way with the cowherd boys and Lord Balram, tending the cows. Now he is hungry, so some food should be given for him and his companions. Shrutva achyutam upayatam nityam taddarshanotsuka tatkatha kshipta manaso babuvur jata sambrama. The wives of the Brahmins were always eager to see Krishna, for their minds had been enchanted by descriptions of him. Thus, as soon as they heard that he had come, they became very excited. Chaturvidham bahugunam annam adaya bhajana abhisasru priyam sarma samudram iv nimagna nimnaga. Taking along in large vessels the 4 kinds of foods, full of fine taste and aromas, all the ladies went forth to meet their beloved, just as rivers flow towards the sea. So 4 kinds of foods. So 4 kinds of one that are sucked, chewed, drank, sucked, chewed, drank, and swallowed. The 4 kinds of food. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the wives of the Brahmins experienced conjugal feelings towards Krishna as if he were their paramour. Thus, they could not be checked as they rushed to see him. And they collected large vessels of 4 kinds of food because Krishna is there and he is hungry and the cowherd boys are there, they are hungry. They just went, and just as rivers flow towards the sea, it means any obstruction comes, they just cross over it. Nishidhyamana patibhir bhratribhir bandhubhi sutah bhagavati uttam shloke dirgha shrut dhritashaya yamno upavane ashoka nav pallav mandite vicharantam vritam gopah sagrajam dadrushu striyaha. Although their husbands, brothers, sons, and other relatives tried to forbid them from going, their hope of seeing Krishna, cultivated by extensive hearing of his transcendental qualities, won out. Although the river Yamuna within a garden decorated with buds of Ashoka trees, they caught sight of him strolling along in the company of the cowherd boys and his elder brother Balaram. श्यामं हिरण्य परिधिं वन माल्य बरह धातु प्रवाल नट वेशम अनव्रतांसे विन्यस्त हस्तम इतरेण धुनान मब्जम कर्णोत्पलाल कपोल मुखाब्ज हासम. His complexion was dark blue and his garment golden, wearing a peacock feather colored mineral, springs of flower birds and garland of forest flowers and leaves. He was dressed just like a dramatic dancer. He rested one hand upon the shoulder of a friend and with the other twirled a lotus. Lilies graced his ears, his hair hung down over his cheeks, and his lotus-like face was smiling. Praya Shrutapriya Tamodaya Karnapura Yasmin Nimagna Manas Sastamathakshirendra Antah Praveshya Suchiram Parirabhyatapam Pragyam Yathabhimatyo Vijahur Narendra. O ruler of men, for a long time those Brahman ladies had heard about Krishna, the beloved, and his glories had become the constant ornaments of the ears. Indeed, their minds were always absorbed in him. Through the apertures of their eyes, they now forced him to enter within their hearts, and then they embraced him within for a long time. In this way, they finally gave up the pain of separation from him, just as sages give up the anxiety of false ego by embracing their innermost consciousness. So very beautifully described. These Brahman ladies had only heard about Krishna. They'd never seen him, but now, and they developed this love for him just by hearing about him. And this is what we've been trying to do, just hearing about Krishna. But we are so fallen, there is no love developed for him yet. So what did they do? See, through the aperture of their eyes, they now forced him to enter within their hearts. So this is how they were looking at him with so much of love and devotion. And then they embraced him within the heart for a long time. So the sight of Krishna is non-different from Krishna himself. Tas tatha tikta sarvasya prapta atma didrikshaya vigyaya kil drishta praha prahasitanana. Lord Krishna, who witnesses the thoughts of all creatures, understood how those ladies had abandoned all worldly hopes and come there simply to see him. Thus he addressed them as follows, with a smile upon his face. Swagatam vo mahabhaga asitam karvam kim yanno didrikshaya prapta upapannam idam hivaha. Lord Krishna said, welcome, O most fortunate ladies. Please sit down and make yourselves comfortable. What can I do for you? That you have come here to see me is most appropriate. Just as Shri Krishna welcomed the gopis who came to dance with him at night, he similarly welcomed the Brahman's wives. So this came to dance with him at night, this Rasliya pastime will come later. He similarly welcomed the Brahman's wives, whose pure love for him was proved by their overcoming many hindrances to see the Lord. The word upapannam indicates that although these ladies had rejected their husband's orders, their behavior was not at all inappropriate, since their husbands had obviously tried to obstruct their loving service to Lord Krishna. Nanvadha mai kurvanti kushla swartha darshina ahatuki avyavahitam bhaktim atma priyayata. Certainly, expert personalities who can see their own true interests render unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service directly unto me, for I am most dear to the soul. The Supreme Lord informed the Brahman's wives that not only they, but all people who recognize their true self-interest take to the spiritual process of loving service to the Lord. Lord Krishna is Atma Priya, the real object of love for everyone. Although each individual has his own taste and freedom, ultimately every living being is a spiritual spark of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, everyone's primary loving attraction is constitutionally meant for Lord Shri Krishna. Loving service to the Lord should be a hatuki without personal motive and avyavita, unobstructed by mental speculation, selfish desire, or any quirk of time and circumstance. So he is recognizing their love for him. Prana buddhi manasvatma dhara patir dhanadaya yat samparkati priya asans tatah ko nva praha priya. It's only by contact with the self that one's vital breath, intelligence, mind, friends, body, wife, children, wealth, and so on are dear. Therefore, what object can possibly be more dear than one's own self? The word yat samparkat in this verse refers to contact with the individual self and ultimately with the Supreme Self, the Lord, who is the origin of the individual living being. By developing Krishna consciousness, one automatically becomes self-satisfied, and thus one's vital strength, intelligence, mind, relatives, body, family, and wealth all become enhanced and brilliant by the central influence of Krishna consciousness. This happens because Krishna consciousness is the optimum, efficient conjunction of the individual self, who is pure consciousness, with the Supreme Self and Supreme Consciousness, Krishna. So we think our self, when it is in contact with others, it gives one vital strength. But it is only because it's part and parcel of Krishna, the self, the soul. Tadya deva yajanam patyo vo dvijataya swasatram pariyeshanti yishma bhir grihi medhina. You should thus return to the sacrificial arena because your husbands, the learned Brahmins, are householders and need your assistance to finish their respective sacrifices. So because Krishna is saying it's your duty to be with them. Shri Patnya Uchu. Ma evam vibhur ati bhavan gaditum nrashansam satyam kurushva nigamam tava padamulam prapta vayam tulsidama padavasrishtam keshara nivodum atilanghya samasta bandhum. The wives of the Brahmins replied, O Almighty One, please do not speak such cruel words. Rather, you should fulfill your promise that you always reciprocate with the devotees in kind. Now that we have attained your lotus feet, we simply wish to remain here in the forest so we may carry upon our heads the garlands of tulsi leaves that fall down from your lotus feet. We are ready to give up all material relationships. Here, the Brahmins' wives are saying something similar to what the gopis say at the beginning of the Rasa dance, when Lord Krishna tells them to go home as well. Like this verse, the gopis' statement begins with the word, Mevam vibho arhati bhavan gaditum nrisancham. Nigam refers to the Vedic literature, which states that one who surrenders at the lotus feet of the Lord does not return to this material world. Thus the Brahmins' wives appealed to the Lord that since they had surrendered to him, it was unfair for him to order them to return to their materialistic husbands. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Krishna might have pointed out to the Brahmins' wives, you young ladies are members of the aristocratic Brahmin community, so how can you surrender at the feet of a mere cowherd boy? To this, the ladies might have replied, since we have already surrendered at your lotus feet, and since we desire to become your servants, we are obviously not maintaining a false identification as members of the so-called Brahmin community. You can easily ascertain this from our words. Lord Krishna might have replied, I'm a cowherd boy, and my proper maidservants and girlfriends are the cowherd girls, the gopis. The wives might have answered, true, let them be so. Let them shine forth. If you are embarrassed in front of your relatives to make Brahmin ladies your maid servants, We certainly don't want to embarrass you. We will not go to your village, but will rather remain in Vrindavan, like presiding deities of the forest. We simply desire to perfect our lives by even a slight trace of connection with you. So even Brahmins' wives, there were so many Brahmins' wives. So they all had the same desire. This is beauty of Krishna. Everybody is attracted by him in one way or the other. And also, again, they were not at all envious of each other when they all wanted Krishna as a husband. Thus, by the spiritual insight of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, we learn that the Brahmins' wives offered to remain at a distance and simply take the tulsi leaves that would fall from the lotus feet of Krishna, or be crushed by the feet of his girlfriends when he would embrace them. The ladies offered to carry these tulsi leaves upon their heads, thus renouncing the desire to become Krishna's intimate girlfriends or maidservants, a position they knew was difficult to achieve. The young Brahmin ladies begged to remain in Vrindavan forest. If the Lord had then asked, then what will your family members say? They would have replied, oh, we have already transcended our so-called relatives because we are seeing you, the Supreme Lord, face to face. So this is the power of devotion to Krishna, the love of Krishna. Material world just becomes insignificant or almost nil, zero, when one becomes attached to Krishna. That is why it is said someplace that you don't go from Delhi to Agra. And if you go from Delhi to Agra, don't take the turn on the road at Chhattisgarh that goes to Vrindavan. And if you happen to go on that road, do not, for whatever sake, do not go to the banks of Yamuna. And if you go to the banks of Yamuna, for God's sake, do not go to Keshi Ghat. Because if you go to Keshi Ghat, if you see this bluish boy playing on his flute with the peacock feather in his hair and wearing yellow garments and bent at three places, that's it. He will not come back. So don't go there. That's how he attracts everybody. That is Krishna. Grinanti no na pataya pitaro sutava na bhratri bandhu suhrida puta eva chanya tasmad bhavat prapadayo patitatmanamno nanya bhaved gati arindam tad videhi. Our husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, other relatives and friends will no longer take us back. And how could anyone else be willing to give us shelter? Therefore, since we have thrown ourselves at your lotus feet and have no other destination, please, O chastiser of enemies, grant our desire. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows. From their very youth, the Brahmins' wives had heard about Lord Krishna's beauty, qualities, and sweetness from the women folk of Vrindavan village, and also from the flower ladies, the betel nut sellers, and others. Consequently, they always felt ecstatic love for Krishna and were indifferent to their household duties. Their husbands, seeing them as deviant, doubted them and avoided dealing with them as far as possible. Now the wives of the Brahmins were ready to formally reject their so-called families and neighbors, and out of great agitation they were crying and placing their heads upon Lord Krishna's lotus feet, offering obeisances. In this way, with choking voices, they spoke the above words. They begged that Lord Krishna bestow upon them the benediction that he be their only destination, and that he, the chastiser of enemies, subdue all their enemies, those difficulties obstructing them from attaining the Lord. So here they call the Lord your chastiser of the enemy. So you please remove the enemy that is obstructing us to attain you. The wives of the Brahmins simply wanted to serve Lord Krishna. And this is pure Krishna consciousness in ecstatic love of Godhead. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Patyunabhya Suyeram Pitri Bhratri Sudadaya Lokascha Vo Mayopeta Deva Api Anu Manvate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, rest assured that your husbands will not be inimical towards you, nor will your fathers, brothers, sons, or the relatives of the general populace. I will personally advise them of the situation. Indeed, even the demigods will express their approval. Na preet ye anuragaya yanga sango nirnamya tanmano mayi unjana achiran mam avapsyatha. For you to remain in my bodily association would certainly not please people in this world, nor would it be the best way for you to increase your love for me. Rather, you should fix your mind on me, and very soon you will achieve me. The Lord pointed out that the people in general would not appreciate the loving affairs between Lord Krishna, who superficially was appearing as a cowherd boy, and the wives from the Brahmin community. Also the Brahmin ladies' own devotion and love would increase most efficiently in separation. So this is the love and separation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. And this is even more strong than the love and union. In other words, it would be best all around if they continued to fix their minds on Lord Krishna and thus went on with the process they had been practicing throughout their lives. The Lord and his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, expertly engaged the Lord's devotees in different types of services so that all of them can quickly return to his lotus feet. So for different devotees, different processes are different there because everybody is at different stage. So Krishna recommends different ways. So he's saying here, Shravanat Darshanat Dhyanat Mai Bhavo Anukirtanat Natata Sannikarshena Pratiya Tato Griham. It's by hearing about me, seeing my deity form, meditating upon me and chanting my names and glories that love for me develops, not by physical proximity. Therefore, please go home. So this is most important instruction. That it's not by physical proximity that the love for Krishna develops. Why? Because in physical proximity we might commit some offenses. But by hearing about him, chanting about him, and seeing his deity form, meditating on him, then the person develops so much of attraction for him that the love really is there. Shri Shukuvacha iti ukta dvij patnyasta yagya vatam punargata techan suya vastabhi stribhi satram aparyam. Srila Shukdev Goswami said, thus instructed, the wives of the Brahmins returned to the place of sacrifice. The Brahmins did not find any fault with the wives, and together with them, they finished the sacrifice. The wives of the Brahmins obeyed Lord Krishna's order and returned to the sacrificial arena of their husbands, whereas the gopis, although ordered by Krishna to go home, remained in the forest to dance with them through the full moon night. Both the gopis and the Brahmins' wives achieved pure love of Godhead. So, different instructions for different devotees. Tatraika vidhrita bhartara bhagwantam yathashutam redo paguya vijaho deham karmanubandhanam. One of the ladies So one of the Brahman's wives had been forcibly kept back by her husband when the other ladies went to the forest to feed Krishna and Balaram. When she heard the others describe the Supreme Lord Krishna, she embraced him within her heart and gave up her material body, the basis of bondage to material activity. So basically, she died. The lady described here was especially devoted to Lord Krishna. Upon giving up her material body, she immediately attained a spiritual body and left the sacrificial arena to join the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagwan api Govindas tenevanen gopakan chaturvidhe nashritva swayam cha bubujhe prabhu. Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fed the cowherd boys with that food of four, right? Okay. So I thought there's some mistake. Then the all-powerful Lord himself partook of the preparations. Evam lila naravapura nirlokam anushilaya preme gopa gopinam ramyan rupavat kritaha. Thus the Supreme Lord, appearing like a human being to perform his pastimes, imitated the ways of human society. He enjoyed pleasing his cows, cowherd boyfriends, and cowherd girlfriends with his beauty, words, and actions. Athanusmritya vipraste anvatapyan kritagasaha yad vishveshvash yoryacham ahanma nri vidambayo. The Brahmins then came to their senses and began to feel great remorse. They thought, we have sinned, for we have denied the request of the two lords of the universe, who deceptively appeared as ordinary human beings. So Krishna, along with his friends, they enjoyed the food, and the Brahman wives, they all came back. But now the Brahmins, they were feeling remorse. And why they were repenting? Why did we not serve Krishna and Balaram? Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram did not try to deceive the Brahmins. They straightforwardly requested food from them. Rather, the Brahmins deceived themselves, as indicated by the Sanskrit word Nrividambayo, which means that Krishna and Balaram are bewildering for an ordinary human being who considers them also to be human. Still, because the wives of the Brahmins were great devotees of the Lord, the foolish Brahmins received spiritual benefit and finally came to their senses. So this is what happens when we associate with the devotees. Then the illusion goes away slowly. Drishtva strinam bhagavati Krishne bhakti malokakim atmanam chataya hinam anuttapta vyagarhayan. Taking note of the wise, pure, transcendental devotion for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and seeing their own lack of devotion, the Brahmins felt most sorrowful and began to condemn themselves. Dhig janma nastri vriddhyatat, dhig vratam dhig bahugyatam, dhig kulam dhig kriya dakhyam, vimukhat ye tva adhokshaje. So they themselves are condemning themselves to hell with a threefold birth. Our vow of celibacy and our extensive learning, to hell with our aristocratic background and our expertise in the rituals of sacrifice. These are all condemned because we are inimical to this transcendental personality of Godhead. As explained in the definitions above, the word Trivriddha Janma, or threefold birth, refer to physical birth, Brahminical initiation, and initiation into the performance of Vedic sacrifice. So physical birth, second is initiation, third is, again, further initiation into performance of Vedic sacrifice. So three Janma. They were not just Vija, they were Trija. Everything is useless if one is ignorant of the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna, and if one is not willing to serve him. What's the use? Nunam bhagavato maya yogi namapi mohi yadvayam gurvo nirnam swarte muya mahe dvija. The illusory potency of the Supreme Lord certainly bewilders even the great mystics. What to speak of us? As Brahmins, we are supposed to be the spiritual masters of all classes of men, yet we have been bewildered about our own real interest. Aho pashyat narinam api Krishna jagadguru duranta bhavam yo vidyan mrityu pashan grihabhidan. Just see the unlimited love these women have developed for Lord Krishna, the spiritual master of the entire universe. This love has broken for them the very bonds of death, their attachments to family life. Superficially, the husbands, fathers, fathers-in-law, and so on were the ladies' gurus or teachers. Yet the women had become perfect in Krishna consciousness, whereas the men had fallen into the darkness of ignorance. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, upon returning home, the ladies showed transcendental ecstatic symptoms such as trembling of the body, shedding of tears, standing of the barley hairs on men, discoloration of the complexion, crying out the pleasure of my life, of Krishna, with faltering words and so on. So the Brahmins was thinking that we had so much of knowledge, so much of piety, so many sacrifices performed, but these, our wives, they are perfect. We have nothing. They were condemning themselves. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes on to state that while one may object that it is not fitting for a woman to love anyone other than her husband, here the husbands themselves point out that they are gurus only in imitation of the Supreme Lord, who is Jagat Guru, the universal teacher and spiritual master. The husbands noted that the women, having perfected their transcendental attachment for Krishna, did not have even a trace of attachment left for home, husband, children, and so forth. Therefore, from that day on, the husbands accepted those ladies as a worshipable spiritual masters and no longer thought of them as a wives or property. So this is because Krishna blessed these Brahmin wives. He said, you go back home and your husbands will not chastise you. They'll treat you with respect. Na sandujati sanskaro, na nivaso guravapi, na tapo na atma mimansa, na shocham na kriya shubha. Tatapi uttam shloke, Krishna yogeshwareshware, bhakti tridana chashmakam, sanskara imatam api. These women have never undergone the purificatory rites of the twice-born classes, nor have they lived as brahmacharis in the ashram of a spiritual master, nor have they executed austerities, speculated on the nature of the self, followed the formalities of cleanliness, or engaged in pious rituals. Nevertheless, they have firm devotion for Lord Krishna, whose glories are chanted by the exalted hymns of the Vedas, and who is the supreme master of all masters of mystic power. We, on the other hand, have no such devotion for the Lord, although we have executed all these processes. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the husbands were not aware that the wives had occasionally associated with the residents of Vrindavan, such as the flower ladies, and had heard about the beauty and qualities of Krishna. The Brahmins are astonished as a wife's loving devotion for Lord Krishna, not realizing that this devotion had developed as a result of hearing and chanting about the Lord in the association of his pure devotees. So this is the key, hearing and chanting in the association of pure devotees. Similarly, when we study about Rukmani Devi, so she also heard from Narad Muni about Krishna and she developed love for Krishna. Nanu swarth vimudhanam pramattanam grihe haya aho na smarya masa gopavakya satam gati. Indeed, infatuated as we are with our household affairs, we have deviated completely from the real aim of our life. But now just see how the Lord, through the words of these simple cowherd boys, has reminded us of the ultimate destination of all true transcendentalists. which is to serve Krishna. That's all. Anyatha purna kamasya kaivalyadya shishampate ishitavya kim asmabhir ishasyat tad vidambanam. Otherwise, why would the Supreme Controller, whose every desire is already fulfilled and who's a master of liberation and all other transcendental benedictions, enact his pretense with us, who are always to be controlled by him? Although Lord Krishna is absolute truth, he humbly sent his cowherd boyfriends to beg food from the Brahmins. In so doing, he exposed the Brahmins' foolish arrogance and established the glories of his own transcendental beauty by attracting their wives to surrender at his lotus feet. So Krishna is Atmaram. He doesn't need anybody's food, but he still sent his friends first to the Brahmins. This was a test for them. So there will be plenty of tests in the path of devotion service. But at the same time, devotees are merciful, so they give all the help. Hitvanyan bhajate yam shri padasparshashaya sakrit swatman doshapa vargena tad yancha janmohini. Hoping for the touch of his lotus feet, the goddess of fortune perpetually worships him alone, leaving aside all others and renouncing her pride and fickleness. That he begs is certainly astonishing to everyone. The supreme master of the goddess of fortune herself obviously does not have to beg for food, as pointed out here by the Brahmins, who are finally manifesting real spiritual intelligence. So Krishna does not have to beg. He is served by Lakshmi Ji herself. So he is begging food is just to give us mercy to the Brahmins. Desha kala prithak dravyam mantra tantra trijo agnaya devata yajmanascha kritur dharmascha yanamaya sa eva bhagavana sakshan Vishnur Yogeshwareshwaraha jato yad ushvita shranam hi api muda navidmahe. All the aspects of sacrifice, the auspicious place and time, the various items of paraphernalia, the Vedic hymns, the prescribed ritual, the priests and sacrificial fires, the demigod, the patron of the sacrifice, the sacrificial offering, and the pious results obtained are all simply manifestations of his opulences. Yet even though we had heard about that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, the Lord of all mystic controllers, had taken birth in the Yadu dynasty, we are so foolish that we could not recognize Shri Krishna to be none other than him. So wonderful qualities they have, Brahmins had, but they just didn't have devotion service towards Krishna. So now they're coming to the real senses. Tasmai namo bhagavate krishnaya kuntamedase yanamaya mohetatiyo brahm ama karma vartmasu. Let us offer our obeisances unto Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His intelligence is never bewildered, whereas we, confused by his power of illusion, are simply wandering about on the path of fruitive work. Savaina adya purusha swamaya mohitatmana avigyatanu bhavanam shantum arhati atikramam. We were bewildered by Lord Krishna's illusory potency and thus could not understand his influence as the original personality of Godhead. Now we hope he will kindly forgive our offense. Iti swagam anusmritya Krishna te krita helana didrikshavo prajam at kansat bhita nachachalam. Thus reflecting on the sin they had committed, by neglecting Lord Krishna, they became eager to see him. But being afraid of King Kansa, they did not dare go to Vraja because they were in Mathura. Realizing their offense against Lord Krishna and finally appreciating his almighty position, the Brahmins naturally wanted to rush to Braj and surrender at the lotus feet of Lord. But they were afraid that Kansa would certainly kill them when his spies reported that they had gone to Krishna. The Brahmins' wives were absorbed in ecstatic Krishna consciousness and thus went to Krishna anyway. Just the gopis, simply to dance with the Lord, traveled in the dead of night through a forest inhabited by wild animals. But the Brahmins were not on such an advanced platform of Krishna consciousness and thus, overcome by fear of Kansa, could not see the Lord face to face. So obviously their bhakti was still not perfect yet. So they still had a long way to go. So they just decided not to go to see Krishna. So that's a difference, because devotees like gopis or these Dvij they just went. They didn't care if Kansa is seeing or not, or what will happen to them. They didn't care. And Krishna says, as we surrender to him, he rewards us accordingly. So he was there to protect them against Kansa. Just the first step is what we have to take. So this is also, of course, the Brahmins, they were not demons, but their mentality was demoniac of not serving Krishna. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in Krishna Chaitanya Shikshamrita that this correcting the Brahmins performing sacrifice, this represents carelessness towards Krishna due to pride because of one's position in Varnashram. So we might be a big Brahman or big person, big Kshatriya or whatever, a big Vaishya having lots of money, but if that carelessness, if that brings pride in us, then okay, why should I surrender unto Krishna? And that's what stops us from surrendering, from serving him. So that all that pride can go away if we just keep on reading this pastime again and again with faith. So thus ends the purport on the 10th canto, 23rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Brahman's Wives Blessed. So I guess we can stop here because tomorrow is wonderful chapter, worshipping Govardhan Hill. So Govardhan Leela, Giriraj Leela is coming up. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.
Thank you.